Have you wanted to learn more about philosophy and spirituality but felt intimidated by ancient Greek or Sanskrit? Is it too embarrassing to admit that we are more than the body? Are you afraid to bring up reincarnation over coffee? Well, we love coffee, and Plato, Buddhism, and Sri Ramana Maharshi. And we think these teachers and systems have some use today. This is the Beware How program, Mystic Philosophy Made Practical. I'm Bob, speaking weekly with Scott and Ryan. We're three conscious creatives and formerly closeted mystics trying to unpack the inaccessible. According to the mystics, the truth cannot be spoken, but we'll try to talk about it anyway. Hi, I'm Bob Peck, and this is the Beware How program. Today is Monday, April 20th. Because we're three creatives in separate yet overlapping disciplines, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the creative process. We'll start with talking about our most recent projects or favorite projects of the last few years. We'll talk a little bit about theory and the spiritual aspect of creating on the intuitive side. And then lastly, have some practical advice if you're interested in creating films, music, design, these different forms of art, kind of what works well as far as techniques and practices and what to avoid. We hope you find it helpful. Cool. I'll just jump right in. So yeah, as you guys know, I finished a documentary recently that took about 2.5 years. It's called Solidarity. It is a documentary, very political, covering the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is packaged in 5 truths, kind of 5 sections that each explain, a fact that I researched about the conflict because it is so complex that I wanted to distill it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that every really American should know about what's going on over there. When I talk to people, they don't really seem to know. Even politically aware friends, most people would say, "Oh, geez, I know it's complicated. Send me the film when you're done because I'd like to learn." That was kind of the most common response. And so, yeah, it was 2.5 years of reading, watching a lot of YouTube lectures, interview panels, reading a lot of articles from a variety of sources. And I'd say the real challenge in the kind of the start to finish aspect was definitely started with an idea that it turned out to be really different. It was Bilal and I. Bilal Shrady is a Palestinian American. That's how I got interested into making the film is kind of late night happy hours with him and him explaining, just how messed up, how much of the Palestinian people are being persecuted by the Israeli government and the Israeli military. And as a documentary filmmaker, I just kind of said, this is a complex topic that I really want to dive into and learn more myself. But definitely adapted over time. I think it started out as we were going to do a series of shorts. If you guys know the AJ Plus, Now This style videos on Facebook that kind of were popular over the past few years, where it's like heavy typography, super quick, like real educational, political educational. That's what we were initially going to do. And the problem is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is so complex that everything that we would try to do in snippets would be without context of some other important thing to understand. So that just kept happening. And so it became an 80-minute movie. It was just like, we just have to do one thing. First it was going to be 5 different 3 to 5 minutes. Then it was going to be one 25 minute. And then it just kept growing. So I'm very glad it's over. It seemed like it was never going to end there for a while, which can happen on a creative project. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as covering the conflict, and we can talk a little bit more about the content, however relevant or irrelevant it is to this program. But what was, I guess, most interesting, most directly relevant to the conversation with you guys is, when you make the case for universal human rights, that every person on planet Earth deserves respect, dignity, freedom to live on their own terms. That is actually, very much a mystic philosophy kind of underlying piece, even though the film necessarily isn't really that spiritual. It's more political, it's more cultural. For me, my motivation actually did have a spiritual component in that it was trying to kind of equalize a persecuted people, against a bully, essentially. Israeli government, Israeli military. Watch my film. I'll link to it if you want to learn more. But essentially, they are committing more wrongs statistically than the Palestinian people. And the way that it's framed in America is that the Palestinians are the aggressors. And so there's kind of there's actual like government military issues on the ground. There's media portrayals that are problematic, and cultural differences. But it was really an interesting exploration. And what was cool was kind of advocating for that universal human rights element. We're all one. We're all in this together. And really, for me, to get both Palestinian Americans in the film as well as Jewish American activists in the film as well, who advocate for Palestine. There's been when you talk about spirituality of Judaism, for example, there's a real beautiful component to the Jewish religion, which is solidarity with the persecuted. And their history, obviously the history of the Jews is pretty rough as well. And so that's a component to this kind of modern Jewish activism, which is turning a corner a little bit on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's been so taboo to be pro-Palestine in prior decades. The 75 years of the conflict, and the film talks about why it's about a 75-year-old conflict and not a millennia-old conflict. But now that Jewish Americans and Jewish Europeans and Jewish Israelis are speaking out on behalf of the Palestinians, now the momentum's starting to turn, and actually Netanyahu is in deep trouble now, just kind of since the film came out. So that's good. But yeah, it was great. It was a really interesting exploration, and I learned a lot, and it was difficult, but I'm happy with the end result.
Man, I feel like my share won't be nearly as noble, but the stuff I work on. No, I just
you probably won't jeopardize your job with it, so there's that.
I'm sure you're fine. No, I was impressed with the film. I learned a lot, even though I thought I knew a lot before I saw it. But
oh, cool, thanks, man.
But yeah, no, you did a great job at that.
There was like a 50-50 like topsy-turvy of like, one day I would be like, man, I'm so glad I'm making this. I'm like, this is, hopefully I'll get this out there and people will get educated. And then the next day I'd be like, why the hell am I making this? Like, it was so frustrating sometimes because it's such a complex topic and it's so incendiary, and like we're probably on a list, like it's crazy. But I'm glad you liked it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, especially.
If y'all have any questions about it, we can talk about that, or we can jump into your share, Scott. I'm eager to hear as well.
No, I was just curious how because what I was planning on talking about, and I'm also curious about on your side, it was just like a creative project that lasts over 2 years, and how you keep yourself like balanced personally during that stretch of time, because like I've made a few albums that took that long, and it's definitely takes a toll on yourself creatively, emotionally, spiritually. Like there's definitely a tax that comes with that length of time. But
yeah, you're right. It really does. I mean, I'd also like not all ideas fully germinate. You know, admittedly,
yeah,
there's a handful of projects that I did start in the last 10 years that that are still in the editing bay and will die in the editing bay. You know.
yeah,
But so those exist. But you know, this one I think really the I mean, I thought about giving up a couple of times because I was like, I just got this job that I finally care about. Like my career, Facebook, is something that I don't want to jeopardize. Like I'm married, we're starting a family, we have a house miraculously. You know, I mean, granted, we're not like a communist country where you can't speak against, you know, things. We have the First Amendment, but there are protocols with corporations of like things that you can't kind of talk about and put out about. So,
yeah,
you know, that was a concern. And really, like, even as an artistic quality, it was like, I wanted to make it just incendiary enough to be legitimate, like basically to make sure Bilal and like other Palestinian activists were proud of associating with it,
yeah,
to where it wasn't too cowed, but also where it wasn't too extreme and too like, whoa, he's associated with that. And you know, I mean, like that was a tricky balance to find, and that was I think probably the biggest reason why there was hesitation. And you know, the freshman congresswoman, AOC, but mostly even Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar got destroyed last year.
yeah,
For their pro-Palestinianness. Rashida Tlaib is a Palestinian American, and that was a huge motivator for me to finish the film and say like, they're in the end of it. But you know, just it gave me perspective on just how much Americans don't know about this the situation over there. So you know, you get little kind of motivational moments, and you know, if it's meant to finish to push through it.
I'm
but
sure that
yeah,
helped.
you're right.
Yeah,
it
I'm
is
sure that
taxing.
helped you feel good seeing like people, you know, like insulting Ilhan Omar and being like, wow, I need to put some things out into the world that like, you know, might make things a tiny bit easier for, you know,
Yeah. Make
Palestinians
some meager contribution. Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm not gonna. I mean, JP. I don't know if y'all know JP Garrick. He's a great creative filmmaker and producer, and he was like, "Oh, you're gonna solve that one?" I was like, "No," but
No.
you know, if I can, and I've got some nice comments on there, which is cool. You know, documentary currency is just if people enjoy it because it's not lucrative, and a couple of people were like, this really explained so much about how, you know, messed up it is over there and kind of, you know, who to support and things like that. So look, I mean, it's not very glory, you know, documentary filmmaking. Like, you got to go into another career. I mean, I don't know. Hi, young documentary filmmakers, if you're listening, learn to code. No, it's not very lucrative, but it is very rewarding because you get to learn everything about a topic. You know, you get to meet people. We'll talk. I'll save it for the end as far as like the process, but
yeah,
which does have this kind of almost like cosmic component to it. So we'll get to that, but yeah, thanks Scott, and Ryan did great work, I should say, too, on the titles and
nice.
some of the animation as usual. He's been making my stuff look good for a long time. make it look far better. So anyway, Scott, you go. And I link to my film that you can watch for free.
Yeah, my offerings are, I don't know, perhaps smaller and weirder. I'm usually writing songs and audio bits and pieces for things here and there. I've been writing and recording music since high school in Texas and all that, and play here with a group in Chicago, and recently just started my own solo material, and I do other writing and other things, but music is always what I come back to, and it's that thing that I will, like, if I'm not making progress on it, I will start to get bummed out. I'll get depressed if I'm not, like, it's like, it's a very essential thing for me in like my deepest core of myself to be creating music, or it can be other stuff, but it kind of it always has to come back to music. I guess I've been doing it the longest, and it's so I get a lot out of it. I get a lot of satisfaction and just like sense of fulfillment from doing it, but I also I don't know, I guess I'm coming at this from like a, how does a creative person stay like emotionally balanced during, the years of creating content? And I can feel that like danger of relying too heavily on creative output for that sense of like security and comfort and satisfaction, because it's great. I get so much out of it, but I almost am afraid that I put too much, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket, so to speak, where it's like, if I'm not, there's other things in the world besides creation. As much as I love it, like, I try to remind myself that, if I had to choose, that, time with my family would win out over that, as an example. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's what I came to mind when you brought up this topic, was just how to stay balanced in the process. And I think I definitely don't have any answers, but that's what I think about when I'm thinking about the kind of like the crossing paths between my like spirituality and my creative output. And the one idea that I think pops up in my mind the most, that gives me I guess comfort or hope, at least, is, I think it is actually was a little snippet story from Tom Waits. And he was talking, he mentioned that he was like driving in a car, like stuck in traffic somewhere on a highway in LA, I assume, or something. And had an idea for a song came to him, and it was just like, he could tell it was an amazing idea, and it just like one of those ideas that just came fully formed. And he was like, I'm sitting in traffic, I can't do anything about this, I don't have anything around me. And so he like talked to the in his mind, the like external force that brought that idea to him. He like shooed it away and was like, sorry, I'm busy right now, I can't help you right now. And it was like a way for him to, and since having heard that, it's kind of a way to like process like the guilt of not constantly being creatively productive all the time. And like, I don't know, there's so much potential for guilt, I feel like, in the whole process, because whether you think you're not doing enough or you're not doing it well enough, it's just so easy to fall into this like kind of pattern of like self hatred, self-flagellation, I don't know what you want to call it, like it's the
self-critic of the artist is
it can be
unparalleled.
Intense. It can be so intense, and it can totally shut down people. I think it can have like some pretty negative consequences. So I don't know. I think that and he, Tom Waits didn't come up with that idea. I think it's been around a while. I think the old like classic term was a daemon or demon, the weird spelling of demon, how they would describe that as the thing that came and like visited you with creative thoughts, and by externalizing it, your self-worth didn't like live or die by the fact of whether or not you're putting something out, or making great strides every single day. But I don't know. So that's
kind of like what you're talking about is kind of like vesselhood, or like being a conduit, which which you're jumping ahead because that's the next section, but I don't want to do that.
No, but yeah, that's.
But no, you're right. There's an aspect to that, and so what you're saying is kind of anthropomorphizing that quality of it is useful for you from like a mental well-being state.
Yeah, I think so, and it's like that, and you know the stuff that I tend to write about does it does have to do with those same topics, but I think the most I can offer is like how to just process that experience of creating, because it's and that's why I'm curious to hear what the other, like diving into what do the other sources have to say about that, because I especially right now during like the lockdown, we were talking about this before the call, but like, do I use this time to create a bunch of stuff, or do I use this time to, and like like the potential guilt that can come with choosing to or not to. And anyway, so that's what I'm most curious about right now.
Yeah. Great, legitimate question. I mean, yeah, Ryan, what Scott and I were talking about too was like, just to expand on that, because I think I'm in the exact same space as like, I'm seeing there's like two schools right now of thought, kind of from even like the creative spiritual folks. There's kind of coming out two distinct strategies. One is make things, be extremely like productive right now. And the other one is like, just rest, be contemplative, like you don't have to do nothing kind of thing. And I hear the wisdom in both of those, I think me in particular, I'm still on paternity leave. So I go back to my core job in a month. And so I'm like, I'll never have this time again.
Yeah.
Which is motivated for the productivity side.
Yeah.
But also like, I don't want to burn myself out while I'm in this like unparalleled, like unprecedented time of everything shutting down. And this is the time to get centered too. Mm-hmm. So what we said earlier was kind of like having it every other day, like having like kind of yin yang throughout your week.
Right.
But how is that something you're dealing with also, Ryan? I mean, I know your busyness kind of comes in waves too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important aspect of that is just all about the energy that you're putting out, right? And how it affects the collective. Because if you're stressing about not using this time to make things and you're guilt tripping yourself, that's not really good energy that you're putting out, So I think whatever is going to keep you, I guess, happiest in this moment is where you should go. And I find myself pretty much right down the middle, like just dead center of either side of those. We've talked about it in previous chats, but I'm really careful of the word should, like what I should be doing right now. And during this time, it is an amazing time to be able to rest and take it easy. Also an amazing time to be able to create. And I feel that we should be doing a little bit of all of that. But I have really tried to let go of what I should be doing and just do whatever I feel like doing and not beat myself up over it. And if it means 2 or 3 days straight of kind of, lazy isn't the right word, I don't think, but maybe it is, just relaxing and taking it easy and not beating myself up over not making stuff, like that's okay, and so I am just trying to follow whatever I feel like doing. And it's been good. Personally for me, I eventually thrive on creating, right? So I wouldn't be able to take a week of lazy days straight. I would hit a point where I was like, no, I need to make something to kind of drive my happiness now, and so it's a checks and balances, I guess. It allows me to like not fall into one or the other too much. So that's kind of how I've been handling it.
Great answer.
Yes, thank you.
Scott and I needed to hear that.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's yeah. And I've kind of done the same. I have split it down. I've had my chill days, just my rebalancing days, but then but yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't provide much context, but that's what I have been doing, is like diving in pretty much every day. I've been like diving in, with the occasional lazy day here or there, just cranking out music. I think it does help. The like music I've been working on, I've specifically tried to like, I'm calling the EP Victoria, Texas, was where my grandparents grew up in rural Texas, and I just like, while creating it, have been like kind of trying to transport my mind into that little town and like imagine what, how difficult life probably is for a lot of the people in that little town, and how stressed out they probably are, and depressed, and just there's just, I can only imagine. And so I've been trying to write some things that, if someone were to just hear, would kind of break down those that, like, I've become particularly interested in music that cuts right to the core of how you're feeling, like an emotion, just like that strips away like those that thing that just cuts through the noise, because there's just so much emotional noise right now. But anyway, so I've been
almost
trying
like
to
method,
channel that.
like you're going method a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, like from method acting, but where you're trying to kind of almost like act as though you are in that state of mind. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. No, because
like they must be scared and frustrated and chaotic. So I'll be scared and frustrated, chaotic,
because I need it too, because I am also those things. Even though I'm, I'm a lucky one. I'm much better off than most people. But yeah, like I need that too. And so any thought or musical or otherwise that comes along that that just gives you that feeling that you, I don't know how to describe it, but just, it's a feeling that cuts through that like frantic, nervous noise, emotional noise that we're all like feeling right now. Just, every time you like turn on your phone and like look at something, you're like, you feel it heightening again. And that energy is, there's a lot of negativity right there out around places right now that needs some balancing. So that's what I've been trying to make in the process, but I've been enjoying the productivity, but I'm also realizing that has to stop at some point. So I'm like trying to get myself ready for that, like that end of having all this free time, and then not being bummed out when I have to go back into normal life. But anyway, so yeah, that's been my experience as of late.
I hear you. Yeah, there's definitely what creativity does. I mean, it's in the word, but we're always reacting. What you're describing is we're kind of human beings. We're always reacting to stimuli, and what creativity does is it gives you the opportunity to make it, to create your energy, to create your the form in which you're expressing and existing, kind of take it back, so to speak, take back the state of mind that you would kind of maybe be the victim of, instead kind of carving it out yourself. And that, I think that's great that you're trying to make some music like that. That sounds so cool. And I think I'm probably your oldest, most fervent fan, so please send me some mixes as soon as freaking possible.
Sending you your way.
Whenever I make music, that's the same process for me as visualizing myself in a place or a mood or a feeling, and like it's like very visual experience for me, and just like hearing the music of that place. But it's interesting visually when I like make visual art. I guess it's a similar process, but it's not like, I guess maybe because I'm mostly a visual artist, when I make music, I'm visualizing a place.
You're visualizing.
Yeah, and then I'm
Right.
making music for that. But when it comes to like making visual art, it's just that, you know, it doesn't work the inverse way. So it's interesting.
That is interesting, and that's kind of a nice segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is like different kinds of art or different types of, in particular, in my world of documentary, kind of educational versus story, and that's a great segue into a conversation I had with a couple of musician pals. Most of my friends make music. You guys both do. Got a few other kind of best buds that are great musicians, and I'm kind of the filmmaker that hangs out with all the music guys, and which is great from a composer standpoint because I have all this great stuff to choose from. But one of the conversations I had with Will was, you know, you guys as musicians are in the emotion business, whereas as a documentary filmmaker, I think of myself as in more of the education business. There's overlap because you're communicating ideas. And they both have value. I mean, I think especially sharing an emotional state with an audience is very useful. You know, probably more useful than an educational explanation about something. But they do have different purposes. And so I think what I'm trying to do is, when I am making an educational piece, you have to feel it. You do have to feel it, or else it's not going to connect with people as much. And music helps with that. But ideally there's some story in it. You know, I try to have a couple of vignettes of like actual things that happen to people inside of the educational piece. So it's not just dry, dense, conceptual stuff. Even though I love that stuff and that's, you know, how I roll. You want people connect emotionally with things. So, you know, I just watched this film, actually, this reminds me, the other night, called The Mindfulness Movement. It was pretty good. I mean, I think it's a great intro to mindfulness. But the one thing about it was the music was terrible. It was so bad. I mean, it really did ruin a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it has like John Kabat-Zinn, what's her name, Sharon Salzberg, you know, Dan Goleman, like everyone who built mindfulness into what it is. And like, I'm in mindfulness club at work and we're probably going to screen it. But one of my prefaces is, before we screen it, is ignore this terrible music because it's so bad, but the film looks good and it's really educational. So anyway, you know, from a film perspective, all the elements have to gel. Everything has to be in the same alignment with the space that you're getting and the emotion that you're getting across, or there's going to be some dissonance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I enjoy composing for film. I feel like it's half the show, so to speak.
It's AV.
Yeah.
It's audio visual, man.
Yeah.
It is so huge. Like, I almost want to email the director and be like, please pay a composer. Here's some money.
Yeah.
Pay my friends to score this.
Mm-hmm.
That's so mean, but it's, you know, whatever. I'm being transparent.
Yeah. I mean, you know, someone loves that score, and you know, they're getting a lot out of it, but well,
part of it I think also is stock music. I mean, if you want to talk about music and creativity and like kind of stock music versus like kind of music, and like even just the industry of, I mean, I think the music industry is one of the most like vampiric business, you know, like as far as how it just removes the heart of the piece, and everyone's first record is the best because it's before the, you know, A&R guys that went to Vanderbilt or whatever that says, you know, no, actually try it like this, like, you know, as soon as there is a commodification element, that can dilute it. And so, I mean, for me in film world, I didn't like I'm not that good with notes. I mean, as far as like producers and outside people. So I kind of like, I have a core career now where I make money that way. And then I just get to make my pieces on my own without any, I get constructive criticism and feedback from friends, but I have very intentionally stripped out kind of any kind of commodification revision from the piece, because when you do something in order to make money from an artistic standpoint, it's typically doesn't land as well with people. It doesn't land as well with me.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of, everyone also just has different tastes, but yeah, there's a huge, I saw yesterday.
I love pop music still. I mean,
it doesn't.
I don't want to be too pretentious.
But. Yeah, it's not as clear cut as pop versus not pop, but yeah, I even saw his Rick Rubin quote yesterday where he said that usually the best personal creative choice is usually the best commercial choice, is what Rick Rubin, legendary music producer, said.
Exactly.
So I think he's correct with that one.
Yeah. He's great. He's very spiritual, by the way.
He is. I didn't realize that.
He's been meditating for 30 years. Yeah.
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 Makes sense. He's a very
he has those great interviews with Kendrick and Pharrell and and they do a sit.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell sat down with him for a little while, I think, and that
nice.
was a really interesting interview too. Yeah,
that sounds great. Relevant to that, one of the next sections here is kind of spirituality of creativity. I think if you or it's also called intuitive. We haven't really talked about this here, but something Ram Dass talks about all the time, rest in power to the late great. But, he would always talk about it, especially in his lectures from the 80s, intuitive versus rational mind. And, the rational mind is useful, it's analytical, it's how we live our lives and, feed ourselves and kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the body, shelter, etc. You need the analytical mind to execute things. But we really, in modern society, we've neglected the intuitive. We're very, especially in the West, we're very dismissive, Oh, I had this idea and, oh, I was crazy, or I had this experience and, oh, whatever, I was drunk, or I was off my, whatever. And that really, I think, for the creative is an extremely useful, space to get into. I've been meditating for about 10 years, about 2 years regularly, if I'm honest. Pretty much every day since my boy got born. Mostly because my wife is please meditate today so you don't go insane later. But it's, when you do integrate a contemplative morning, for example, meditation in the morning is ideal. You actually will get ideas. There's guided, the way I like to describe it is there's guided meditation and open awareness. Meditation is like sports. There's a lot of different types and cultural, different things, geographically, etc. But it really, if you're really breaking it down into the corest of the most inherent differences, it's guided versus open awareness, and they're both useful. Guided meditations can be good for either beginners or also affirmation based meditation, which I do like also. But also open awareness, for the creative, just sitting there, nice sounds, etc. I got the title of my film, for example, of meditation, in The Kingdom Within. The first title, which is still a good title. It might have done better if I went with it, which was Why Yoga is Not the Devil. Mm-hmm. It was very, antagonistic. It was very damn it, you crazy preachers, just in the title. And there's a line in Gospel of Luke, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so yeah, that that line, the kingdom within, just popped into my head when I was meditating. And that's an example of, you know, how you can get ideas or get inspiration.
I need to try that.
Yeah, it's
yeah, you should, damn it.
It's the idea behind the inspired thought. Inspire comes, the etymology of the word inspire is in spirit. So I every time I get a thought like that, I refer to it as an inspired thought.
That's
yeah.
I like that. That makes
So
sense. Gotten a few
Scott,
of
you're
those.
not. Ryan, tell us more about your meditation practice and how it relates to your creative process.
Well, let's see. I mean, honestly, I tend to separate the two a decent amount. I mean, they're not directly related. I think they're indirectly related. I mean, my meditation practice certainly keeps me anchored, and I feel like it allows me to stay focused and passionate on what I'm doing, and keeps my mind, you know, on track. I feel like if I go for too many days without meditating, you just it's not like I'm gonna die, but my brain feels a little bit scattered, you know, and I always feel much more centered and more aware of the steps I need to take in order to complete something, or maybe what my next step is. But I don't know if I have oftentimes too many like ideas directly related to my creative work that comes through meditation. It certainly has happened for sure. But I think more so my meditation it provides the bumpers on life, right? It like keeps me moving in the right direction without falling off the track. So, but there was something that I wanted to talk about too, is in terms of like kind of relating my spiritual practice in general to the creative practice. I think I just wanted to share this thing that I was thinking about. It was a kind of a part of my process over the last like couple years, and I had this. I think for a long time, a lot of my creative practice was very professional facing, right? I was just kind of following my peers in the industry and following the people that are doing well, that are quote unquote successful, and trying to, on the professional side, keep a very professional look, you know? And I think for a long time I was hesitant to bring my spiritual practice into my creative professional practice. And it's because of the industry, really, you know. I mean, the people that we work with that in the world of in the tech world anyways, making mobile apps or websites or TV commercials, that whole world. I mean, it's not a super spiritual world, you know. You meet a few people here and there, but so I think I was like always hesitant to bring my spiritual practice into it, and I realized that it was ultimately holding me back from expressing exactly my best work and what I really wanted to express. I was like suffocating my creativity, you know. And I hit this moment, I think it was maybe about a year and a half ago. It was when the interactive installation that I made, Trip, came out. And it was part of that decision was like the decision to call it Trip, also introducing like, you know, my affinity for psychedelics. Not so much anymore, but like, you know, experimented a lot in college, and absolutely was core to like a lot of my principles, spiritual principles now. And I'm a big fan. I think, you know, when when the time is right, or if the time is right, I believe everyone should experiment in little bits. Should could benefit from experimenting in little bits. But I was super. I think I was just ashamed about that for a long time. I was nervous to talk about it, and eventually I hit this point. I was like, I'm holding myself back from like expressing really who I am and what I love, and it's not helping me at all, and it's not helping anyone around me either. I'm not giving my full self, you know? And so I hit this point where I was like, no, I'm not going to be ashamed of my spirituality. I'm not going to be ashamed of, you know, my art that's inspired by psychedelic experiences. And when I embraced that, it was just like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. And I just felt like I was able to really create in the way that I wanted to. And so, and yeah, calling my installation Trip, you know, and it's literally it's a character flying through a wormhole in space. It's very psychedelic.
It's brilliant.
And it is a trip in itself, and the visuals are inspired by, you know, kind of psychedelic visions. And so
and you also got great critical responses to it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's the great payoff, was your vulnerability, which I'm so glad you had that realization.
Yeah.
Not only were you extremely wrong about the anticipated, you know, responses, they probably beat your expectations, because it was, I mean, there was like lines out the door for this exhibit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. And it actually translated that exact same way into even the professional space too. What I started to realize is that like the more you embrace like who you really want to be, and not hide any part of you, and not feel ashamed for it, just because maybe social norms or cultural norms aren't there, the more people actually tend to really respect that, because you're kind of standing up for yourself, and you're willing to kind of put it all out there and say, hey, this is who I am, and I'm not going to hide it, you know? And yeah, so it actually, exactly, it was all of my preconceptions about it were the opposite of what was true, you know? And so that was a big moment for me. And yeah, on this topic of the relationship between my spiritual practice and my creative work, I think that was one of the biggest moments for me in the last year and a half. And I would definitely encourage anyone listening to not be ashamed of any part of you if it doesn't fit into cultural norms or societal norms, and really embrace that, because ultimately it's what makes you unique, and it's what gives you a really unique perspective. And I think people really tend to appreciate and respect that in the end. So
beautiful.
Yeah,
well said.
That's huge. Yeah, I could do well listening to that myself too. I'm definitely I feel like sometimes I need to wear a shirt that says Closet Mystic, because I'm like a little bit, I don't
well,
talk
these are
about
going live on the internet.
I know. This is me. This is my coming out. Welcome to my coming out party.
Literally, I'll let you finish, but I have to chime in.
Yeah, well, no, that's all I really want to say. I mean, mainly just that I don't really talk about these beliefs with many people, and so I even will sometimes try to hide those beliefs within, like, you know, lyrical content or written content or whatever. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. And like, I've kind of, in this project I'm on right now, it's like, no, I'm just going to write some, like, you know, cosmic hymns to embrace my like secret hidden mysticism and just like see what happens.
Yes.
And so it's been really like,
so excited.
It's been really uplifting to like just embrace it fully.
Come on out, man.
It's really on that topic too. It's been interesting trying to explore that balance of that line, as far as like bringing me personally. I work at a tech company here in town. We build immersive experiences, physical installations, and I trying to figure out where that line is. And but this applies to anyone. I mean, this applies to religion and as well. Just like, where to bring in your spiritual practice, and how to like not be afraid of showing it, but also not like pushing it onto people either, because that is the opposite of what you want to do as well, you know. And I think for me, it's just it was this moment where I just like decided, I'm like, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. I'm going to talk about it. If it comes up, I'm not going to push it down people's throats, but if it comes up, I'm going to share exactly how I feel and what I think about something. But I'm also not going to be attached to like anything in my workplace being connected to that. Like, but I'm just not going to hide it anymore, you know. And it was really amazing, and felt really good to be able to do that. And like I was saying, there were definitely, through that process, people in my life that have really opened up, and I can feel the the admiration for, you know, just doing that. It's because just like you just said, just like you, Scott, there are so many other creatives out there that are probably in the same boat, and it's just it's like it's scary to like bring that in, but
it's scary to think you might not be cool.
Yeah, no, totally.
Or you're crazy.
Yeah.
I published a piece on the chakras in December, and that was my coming out, really. Or so I thought. It did pretty well. It you know, got whatever. Did decent on Medium, and I posted it to my Facebook profile. And all my coworkers can see that and stuff. And the chakras, pretty esoteric stuff here, guys. I mean, it was like, you know, me explaining the first one, second, all the way up to the seventh, and you know, it's not very scientific stuff. It's esoteric philosophy. And that was a few days after that. I went into work, and I was just like, I did feel ousted. I was like, oh, everybody knows you know, not a scientific materialist. Oh God, you know. And yeah, several people were like, hey, I saw that was so cool, and you know, thanks for writing that. I learned from it. And you know, it definitely, you know, to Ryan's point, it was the opposite of my initial, like, oh, everyone's gonna think I'm crazy, you know, kind of false story thought process. Which, by the way, we should do another one. Maybe this is like kind of my bit on these, is like to be like, we'll do one about this other topic. But Byron Katie, we have to do one on Byron Katie's work. We should just spend a whole one doing different false stories. But her process really helped me with that one in particular, with the mystic ousting. To say like the thought is like, people will think I'm crazy. Like, that's the thought. And then the first question is this true? And you kind of sit with it. And you're like, no, that's not true. Yeah. And then you give examples of why it's not true. And it's like, well, I have a successful job. You know, I'm decent at, I'm a good citizen. I have a woman's been with me for 10 years, so I must not be that great. You know, it's like you kind of go down and prove yourself wrong and prove yourself right, I guess. That your fear, your hesitation, kind of about mine has been about vulnerability, and I think this project as a whole is definitely, you know, if that was coming out of the closet, this is the ball. You know, this is the, you know, ton of emails talking to you guys about what lives inside of our hearts and all this stuff. You know, it's definitely kind of ripping everything open. So, you know, there has been hesitation in the past to do that, and I think, you know, just kind of adding to Ryan's point, because he said it so well earlier. But yeah, I mean, it's very liberating, and what I honestly, second point to all that for me is. I know this happened to me a couple months ago, where we do mindfulness club at work, me and a few other people, and they're great. And one of my friends brought in this guy who is an app developer, and he just made a mindful app, and it's really cool. And we want him to speak to the club and to our organization. And we had lunch. It was the admins of the club and him, and you know, he kind of gave us his whole story, and it was very it was a really cool story. He was raised Mormon. He was like, got into sales, made a ton of money when he was like in his 20s, and then had a breaking point, and then like went to Peru and did shamanic stuff and ayahuasca and all of that stuff, and like realized that like there is a spirituality component. It was a really grand, beautiful story. We were just transfixed the whole time. And this thought for me kept coming up, which was, I mean, it was like, well, I was spiritual like before, like it was so annoying of like, well, I read Yogananda in 2010. And when I was, it was like, so like, why do I have to prove to this person and these people that my spiritualness meets his or exceeds it? Like, God, that's something I'm working on, or even just like, it was like kind of like one up tendency, but like just to be like, oh, that's really cool. Well, like I've been into cool things also, like on my own, or the worst one even would be like, well, I've been doing this since before your realizations. I mean, what a horrible voice in there. Like, what is that? Why can't I just accept that this guy also had a similar realization? And then I eventually did. And there's a mantra that I've kind of been working with, which is compassionate brotherhood, or like kind of being a compassionate brother to as opposed to being competitive. We're always kind of going, oh, well, I want the big, well, why can't I just appreciate this person for his amazing story, support his app, which is called Daily Shifts, by the way. I should reference it. It's a really interesting app. His name's Doug. And we ended up having a great lunch the next day. So anyway, we're all works in progress. But that's the one I'm working with now, is like, now that I'm out as a mystic, now it's like, kind of to the conversation that we have we usually get here, which is like, how do we brand this, and how do we make sure that we're not like self-help, like get enlightened in 30 days people. Because those books exist. There are book titles
you
on
showed
Amazon
me the
that are like
to those.
with some judgment attached in a text. But how do we do it, kind of like Ryan said, like how do we do it in a way that is like not pushy, not authoritative, but coming from a place of brotherhood or sisterhood, or coming from a place of, this is kind of work for me. My mind is open. I'm full of flaws too, but I've made some incremental progress here and there. So trying to land in that state.
Yeah.
To me, the biggest hesitation, or my, like I was nervous to do these, these talks. Like I'm not used to talking in front of a camera, and content aside, I was nervous about that. But like specifically, coming out as a mystic. It's like the norm in like our culture is that like to be a cynic is to be cool. That's like what the baseline is for our culture.
Yeah.
And
just fuck it, man.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's like, and that's different than being like a scientific skeptic, which I am also that. Like I am that. Hopefully I'm not a cynic, but like I have two parents that are scientists, and I like love healthy scientific skepticism. But this is different. I'm also not a scientific materialist, which we could talk about those differences in the future.
That's going to be another one.
Yeah, because that is really interesting to me. That's like I love like the scientific method, and I also love being a mystic, and I feel like those two can coexist, but that's like a whole bag of worms. But anyway, just that aside, just not being a like baseline cynic at every single thing, or just admitting that I'm not one was like hard to do, because I was like, I'm not gonna be perceived as like nonchalant, cool anymore, whatever. I don't know, whatever those like annoying voices were that were popping in my head, is just like detaching myself from that like constant cynicism that like we all have to kind of toe.
Oh, you're going to be open now to something beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Great.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, no, I know. So that's the voice. That's the voice I've been hearing. But
that's good. Yeah, there's another one too that's pretty good, which is also Byron Katie-esque, which is I need the validation of zero people.
Yeah.
That's a real good one.
Love that.
Because that pull that one out every few days.
Yep.
Particularly like having to do with social and like.
Yep.
Oh, he texted me back.
Mm.
Or it's like I had a line that was like, you're getting more and more mystical, like proportionate linearly to like the amount of being left unread. Like people just aren't really getting this. But it's their loss. I still love them anyway. Or also maybe I just need to, keep it to the other ousted crazy people.
Yeah,
like
I think to be a mystic is to be a little bit on the fringe by its nature, which is what it is.
Yeah. Well, there's a Campbell quote. Joseph Campbell is great. Is the psychotic drowns in the same water that the mystic swims in delight.
Nice.
It's like, he gets it. There is a bit of irrationality to it all.
Just for a little context, Bob, would you maybe give your definition of like what a contemporary mystic is?
Yeah. Well, sure.
It's probably a kind of complicated to answer, but
the Rumi quote is it for me. It's I went searching in temples, mosques, and churches, and found the divine in my heart.
Yeah.
That's really it. It's just kind of the opposite of institutional religion, needing this kind of external structure and institutional system. It's systemless spirituality that can be ecstatic from a experiential kind of bliss and joy, and it's just a realization that there's a kind of capital L light within that is really, really full and really, really whole, and chipping away at it. I think what these practices do, I think creativity included, to be relevant here to the topic, what these practices do is they chip away and they remove our own barriers within that we've built up over time to kind of undo the falseness of ourselves to bring out the true.
Yeah. That's great. I think I don't know if it was on Wikipedia or something, but I feel like I remember reading in the definition of a mystic is like a seeker of truth. It's like there's an emphasis on like seeker, like seeking.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they also talk too about like remembering.
Yeah. That's I think could be used interchangeably in this. Actually, probably more rightfully so, remembering, but from a non-dual standpoint, anyways.
It's funny because your definition reminds me of how I remember as a kid Protestantism being described to me versus Catholicism, where they were like, oh yeah, the Catholics, they're more about like the church and the institution, but we're more about the personal relationship. I guess that's different. They say a personal relationship versus it's within, but I mean, it's a similar point.
It's great marketing language.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
very stuffy.
It's worked well for the Protestants. Yeah, they've had some great ROI on that marketing job.
They did. They had a great run. I mean, I think they're in decline lately, but yeah. Well, faith versus works too is a big kind of Protestant versus Catholic.
Right. Yeah, it's just interesting that it felt in its own way like a little bit of a stepping stone towards the mystics' standpoint of like. Well,
in a sense, they were getting they're going around the Vatican, so that's true. Yeah, the Protestants don't need the Vatican and the Pope and
right, and then they went and made their own institutions and their own mistakes and then
and we're stuck in a loop basically. Yeah. Yes. We don't need a Pope, but Joel Osteen has 40,000 people every Sunday. And millions of viewers online and watch The Righteous Gemstones, because then you'll get that whole scene.
I haven't seen that yet.
Cool. Oh, it's so good. Danny McBride is just a genius. But as far as kind of maybe closing up here, I really enjoyed our conversation. I have an hourglass that is a baby. That'll be another episode of Keck. I gotta stop. But,
you know, whiteboard on the back wall, and every time you say that, you add it.
Next episode, and then tally. Yeah, I know, but it's just.
And then when you fill the whiteboard, you just erase it all and start over again.
Yeah, we never do what you say we're gonna do.
These episodes never happen. You know, I don't know. Practical application of creativity, you know, kind of on the way out, for people that are interested. You know, I think we're not household names or anything, but we have been doing this stuff for 10 years. And, you know, I think as far as the filmmaking side and making documentaries, what I would say to people that are interested in doing it would be just kind of to make sure that your intention is to, you know, shine a light on a topic that's interesting to you. And the equipment is affordable. It doesn't take much. I mean, I had the camera already, but I made this Palestine film for $0. Granted, it's a lot of borrowed footage I didn't pay for, and I'm not making any money off of it, but, you know, filmed everything and recorded everything and edited everything. You know, without really a production budget. So this stuff is accessible. I mean, making music, you know, most people have computers. You can download things, and really just, you know, reading about them online. I guess we could maybe even, I put a contact thing on the site. So people have questions for us or anything, or in the comments or whatnot. Happy to answer them. Happy to kind of help people through the creative process as well. But yeah, I think I guess I'll just kind of close at least on my piece by saying making films has been so fascinating. I'm going to do them forever. And, the coolest thing I think about documentary is you start with one person and you know, a couple people, and you're like, they would be great in this film about this topic. And then you interview them and they go, who else are you going to do for this? You know, hopefully it went well. And then they go, you know, do you have anybody else in mind? And no, not really. I don't know. And they go, oh my God, you have got to talk to this person, and you got to talk. And so you kind of just go down this, you know, tunnel, this labyrinth of people referring you to people. And, you know, that's even just on the educational side, let alone if you're filming a more story-based doc, you know, that's going to happen also with that. So you don't have to have it all figured out. Maybe, I guess, is the point there. You just need a little bit of equipment, a little bit of preparation, and some good questions, and start with a couple of people, and you'll get referred, and then, you know, it'll go from there. So good luck.
And it helps to be as likable and personable as Bob.
True.
And you can also pay them money.
Yeah, if you're not likable, just give them some money, and you're good.
Tweet them.
Yeah, I don't know if I have many practical tips. I don't know. I think what I was bringing up for the talk was more, I mean it is practical, but just like how to like you know, it's how to keep yourself from burning out. I think that happens
that's super useful advice.
Yeah, so it just and I don't even know exactly what the answer is, other than what we were kind of already talking about on this call, as far as like I try to externalize the source of these and not let my own like self-worth like live or die based on how good I think my creative content is. So just keeping that in mind is my main bit of advice I would give to people.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think any sort of creative practice is good for everyone. I always think about Brene Brown, her audiobook, The Power of Vulnerability, and she talks about in many of her other books some of the most essential things related to happiness in adults specifically is a sense of play. So being playful and just taking time to play, but also being creative, taking time to create. And it doesn't matter if you don't think you're creative. There's a million ways to be creative, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be filmmaking. It could be drawing or coloring with crayons, or if you're a spreadsheet nerd, drawing pictures in Excel by coloring blocks. Whatever it might be. But
I learned this year that you can be amazingly creative as a programmer. So there's
nice.
any facet.
There you go. So yeah, I really do believe that just the act of being creative and creating things. I see a lot of knitting and stitching nowadays. Seems to be gaining in popularity, which is fun. It's cool to see those. It's really funny to see contemporary internet memes stitched into something that looks like your grandma made, but it's like, it just cracks me up. So there's lots of ways to be creative, and
there's no shortage. This time is kind of just, there's never been this amount of variability in how you can express yourself. And it's so damn rewarding. But I would encourage everyone to play more and create more. That's it.
Agreed.
Beautiful. Agreed. Alrighty, thanks guys. Insert outro.
Yeah.